Welcome to Mortgage 101, where you will learn the important steps of buying or refinancing a home. Hello, I am glad you are here. My name is Nathan Rufty, a mortgage loan originator with over 25 years of lending experience that has your best interests in mind. After listening to this full podcast, connect with me to discuss your home loan needs. Now on with the show. Welcome to another very informative podcast with Mortgage 101. My name is Nathan Rufty, a licensed mortgage loan originator. Today's topic is going to talk about bankruptcies. How long do you need to wait to buy a house after a bankruptcy, whether that be a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 personal bankruptcy? You can still purchase a home after that seasoned period. Right now, FHA is 1 to 2 years, VA is 2 years, conventional is 2 to 4 years, and USDA is 3 years. And that is from the discharge date, not the filing date, but from the discharge date for a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13. But I'm going to go into details on each of the Chapter 7 and 13. The 7 is when you completely wiped your debt clean, you don't owe anybody, your slate is now at zero, and you have to rebuild that credit. That's a Chapter 7. When you file that Chapter 7, we start the clock when it was discharged, and it's exactly the day of discharge, not the month, but the day. So if you had a bankruptcy and a discharge March 2nd, we need to close your loan after March 2nd, which is March 3rd. So it can't just be in that month or like towards the end of the month when if it's discharged on March 25th, we can't fund you on March 10th. Has to be after that date. So it's the exact date of the discharge, whether it be a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13. But there is a caveat to Chapter 13, and I'm going to go into that. And a Chapter 13 is when you restructure your debt. The bankruptcy court says, no, you don't qualify for a Chapter 7. We're going to have to roll you into a Chapter 13. And that's when they restructure your debt and you pay the trustee court X amount of dollars a month and they pay off the debt for you. So that is a Chapter 13. So chapter enters, you can still purchase and refinance even during a Chapter 13. Okay, so we'll go into that. But a Chapter 7 wipes your debt clean. You can purchase a home. FHA, it's 1 to 2 years. Conventionals is 2 to 4 years, and VA is 2 years. Now there are typical, it's 2, 2, and 4 years. Those are the typical. 2 years for FHA, 2 years for VA, 4 years for conventional, and 3 years for USDA, and there's no exemptions for the USDA. But for the FHA, VA is 2 years, no exemptions on that. Conventional and FHA, and I went a little fast, but the FHA is 2 years typically. The conventional is 4 years typically. VA, 2 years. That's what it is. It's from the discharge date. USDA is 3 years. But on the FHA and the conventional, there are two circumstances that you can purchase early. Okay, after 1 year for FHA and then after 2 years from the discharge date. So you don't have to wait the full 4 complete years for conventional. You can do it after 2 years, but there's called extenuating circumstances. So if you had a bankruptcy and you meet these extenuating circumstances, you can purchase a property before the 2-year window on an FHA and a 4-year window on a conventional. But the extenuating circumstances are something that is a catastrophic event that suddenly happened this one time, like a death of the primary wage earner, a job loss that you didn't quit or get fired, you got laid off, the job scenario changed where the company closed and they moved to a different state or just shut down altogether. That was beknownst to you that you were not the driving force of like getting fired, or you said, I'm done, I'm quitting. So it's layoffs, job quit and moved to a different state, death of the primary wage earner that brought in the most money and that individual happened to pass, a divorce. So we need to documentate heavily that file for you if you've met the requirements within that 1 year window for FHA and the 2 year window for extenuating circumstances. So we have to documentate the file a lot compared if we had to wait the 2 year standard or the 4 year 2 year standard for FHA or the 4 year standard for conventional. So be prepared to supply the lender, the underwriter, a lot of paperwork on what changed here. We don't want to go too into detail in privacies, but we got to documentate it on what was that catastrophic event, that one time sudden significant impact that occurred that you had to do the bankruptcy. So you can still purchase and or refinance, but you also have to reestablish credit. I mean, I know it's kind of difficult, and I talk to a lot of people that after bankruptcy, they wash their hands of it. They've had a bad experience. It was a roller coaster ride. All the phone calls they receive from creditors wanting to pay, going to collections, going into judgment. Yes, it is a credit nightmare. I completely understand that. I've been doing this a long time and talked to a lot of borrowers that went through that, and it's unfortunate that they had to go to that situation and also file bankruptcy. Bankruptcy may have been their last alternative item that they had to do just to get reestablished back in the credit world and get back up on their feet financially. So after the bankruptcy, a lot of people say, I don't want to get credit. I'm done with it. I've had that bad experience. But unfortunately, you've got to reestablish yourself back in the credit world. So if you haven't done that, you've got to start getting it started slow. And whatever occurred for the bankruptcy, and you had that much debt that you had to BK it, learn from that and don't get yourself too much in debt like you did before. You got to have some open established credit. You've got to get that credit score back up. And you can't you file bankruptcy and all of a sudden you have late collections, whether it be medical collections or utility collections. That's what the underwriter looks at. It goes, man, this individual filed bankruptcy. Now they got themselves back into financial difficulties even after a bankruptcy. So you don't want to do that. Get yourself back into the credit world after the bankruptcy, whether it be a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. You've got to get back in the credit world. But there is hope. You are able to purchase a home with reestablished credit on an FHA. Standard is 2 years, but if you meet the extenuating circumstances after the 1 year of discharge, we can look at what was that extenuating circumstances to get back you into home ownership after that 12 months of discharge. With conventional, the standard is a 4 year from the discharge date for Chapter 7, but you can apply and look at your options after 2 years of the discharge date if you met those extenuating circumstances. And those extenuating circumstances does not mean that you've got yourself into debt and you just said, forget it, I'm going to file bankruptcy. That's not what that is. It has to be a one-time catastrophic event that happened in your life at that particular moment that forced you, and that was your last resort, to file a BK7 or 13. But the BK7 wipes yourself clean. Chapter 13 is when you petition yourself to go get a bankruptcy, and the court says, no, you make too much money, you have this too much assets, you can reestablish yourself, and they restructure your debt into a 13. That's when you pay the trustee court every single month, and they restructure it, and they get these debts paid in full at a lesser amount, of course, but you get yourself reestablished. Now, the window for Chapter 13 from a discharge is 12 months for a FHA. So after you've been discharged for 12 months, you can look at rebuying. But on an FHA, two things. You can purchase or refinance on an FHA program during that Chapter 13. You have to have 12 months of on-time pay, and you must get court approval to be able to restructure and purchase a home, or you can't go out and buy a car. You can't do anything during that time period that you're paying back that Chapter 13. But you can petition a court to say, hey, I'm going to purchase a home. I'm going to better myself. My rent is $2,000 a month. I'm going to buy a home and it's going to cost me $1,800 a month. You got to put yourself in a better financial position. So during that Chapter 13 restructure period of 12 months of on-time pay, you can petition the court to purchase a home or refinance one, as long as it can put you in a better financial position during that Chapter 13 repayment plan. But you have to pay that Chapter 13 12 months on time. So it's 12 months, you're into it. Or 12 months after the discharge date, or one day right after the discharge date, you can go out and get an FHA loan 1 day out of discharge. So 12 months in it, and then 1 month out of discharge, you can purchase a home. So 12 months of on-time pay, petition to the court, say yes, or you let it discharge, and it's 1 day out of discharge date for Chapter 13. It's that easy. There's no 2-year waiting period, a 12-month waiting period. You just cannot purchase or refinance during the Chapter 13 repayment plan, and typically it's about 36 months, is you got to have a 12-month of on-time payment, petition the court during that restructure period to say if you can purchase or refinance. And if they say yes, then perfect. We can go out and purchase a home before the discharge. But if they say no, and then the Chapter 13, you're done, you've paid everything back, and it discharges, we can close escrow the day after a discharge. So it's got to be 1 day after the discharge on an FHA. VA, 1 to 2 years, extenuating circumstances on the 13. The conventional, 2 to 4 years typically. It's the 4 years, but you can do it after the discharge date. Now, VA, conventional, USDA, there's no, during that restructure period, you can't do anything. FHA is the only one that allows that right now, that you can purchase or refinance during that restructure period of 36 months. Hopefully this is not all confusing to you. I know I'm throwing a lot of dates out, but if you got any questions, please call me so we can go more in the depth on your situation. But VA 1 to 2 years with the extenuating circumstances, conventional on a Chapter 13, 2 to 4, and a typical is 4. But if you meet those extenuating circumstances after the 2-year bankruptcy on a 13, you can apply, but it's got to meet those extenuating circumstances that I spoke about a little earlier. If not, if you don't meet those, 4 years from the discharge date of that 13, and USDA is 1 year. So you can get yourself back. But remember, once you file that bankruptcy, especially a 13, and it's been discharged for 2 or 3 years, and you're finally back up on your feet financially, no lates on any kind of credit cards, collection judgments. I mean, you should have learned your lesson from the Chapter 7 bankruptcy or the Chapter 13 bankruptcy to say, hey, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be a little bit more cautious with my credit and my finances so I don't have to ever get back into this position again. Whatever got you there, hopefully it doesn't happen again, that made you file that Chapter 7 or 13. But you still can purchase and you still can refinance if you meet those requirements. So let me recap. FHA for Chapter 7. Now let's just go to Chapter 7. Chapter 7, 1 to 2 years. And then after that 12 months, you got to meet those extenuating circumstances. VA, 2 years. No extenuating circumstances for Bankruptcy 7. Conventional, standard is 4 years. But after 2 years from the discharge date, with those extenuating circumstances, you can apply. USDA is 3 years. So that's Chapter 7. So conventional is always going to be the longest on all these things. Standard 4 years for Bankruptcy 7 and a 4-year typical for Bankruptcy 13. Now, recap on Chapter 13. For an FHA, you still can purchase a home during that repayment plan, restructure payment plan, but you got to have 12 months into it and have a 12-month on-time pay. And we got to get that rating from the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court. So we'll get that. Or you let it discharge 1 day out of the discharge from Chapter 13. VA, 1 to 2 years. 2 years typical. You can apply for a VA loan if you're a veteran, active or retired military, after 12 months, meeting those extenuating circumstances. Conventional, typical time period for Chapter 13 is a 4-year, but you can apply after a 2-year discharge date if you met those extenuating circumstances. And USDA is the 1 year. So yes, you can buy a house after a bankruptcy. There's not this big, long waiting period. But if you filed a Bankruptcy 7 or a 13, you must have gotten yourself reestablished back into the credit world with no lates. We run everything through desktop underwriting, through Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. We run your file through that, and it reads your credit. We can't do anything with your credit. Read your credit score, and it reads what's in the body of the credit. And if you have a lendable credit score, but it's not liking that you had a bankruptcy and there was some lates afterwards, they're like, hey, this is a risky borrower. We're not going to, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, and USDA is not going to do this loan. You're going to have to do some non-QM program that's not going to be as favorable as the traditional FHA, VA, and conventional and USDA program for yourself. So I know it's tough with that bankruptcy. I've talked to a lot of people. Bankruptcy may have been their last resort and they had to do it, but there is light and there's hope at the end of the tunnel as long as you took those necessary steps to get yourself reestablished back in the credit world after the Bankruptcy 7 or even during a Chapter 13 for FHA. So there is hope out there for you to establish it. I've talked to a lot of people, and they talk to a lot of people, and they don't talk to the people that are in the business. Talk to licensed loan mortgage professionals that do this every single day. I know you like to get those feedback from family and friends, but if they're not in the business, things change in our business. The bankruptcy stuff can change next year. To say, we're going to take it to a 2-year window for conventional versus a 4-year window, traditionally without the extenuating circumstances. That's why you got to speak and connect, hopefully with me, licensed mortgage professionals in the state of California to purchase or refinance a property if you had a bankruptcy, because we stay on top of this. This is our livelihood. This is what we do. We educate ourselves. And if you're talking to a loan officer who doesn't know these things, then you need to find another mortgage loan originator. But you still can purchase property even in a Chapter 13. You got to go FHA though, but not Chapter 7. Once that's been done and discharged, it takes about 3 months from the filing date to the discharge date. It takes about 90 days for that to happen. And we got to get your discharge paperwork, which is 1 to 2 pages front and back, and it says the date it was discharged. We got to go by that exact date. When we run the credit just has the month and the year. It doesn't have the exact date. Once we run the credit report, we have a filing date, then we have a status date, and that status date shows that it's been discharged, but it just gives the month and the year. That's all it gives. My name is Nathan Rufty, a licensed loan originator. I love to connect with you and talk to you about purchasing or refinancing a home, even if you had a bankruptcy and you got to get reestablished back in that credit world. I know it might be a little tough and you have that bad taste in your mouth about credit, how you were treated, everything about it. I totally understand that. But start small. Start with a credit limit of a card of $250 or $500 and utilize that thing sparingly. Put some gas on it a couple months and pay it off. But got to get yourself reestablished, because you got to have that credit history. You got to reestablish that credit score. And when the credit, I always talk about it, you need 2 things of credit: your credit score and what's in the body of the credit. So you can have a lendable credit score, but what's in the body of the credit is still going to hamper your ability to be able to purchase or refinance a property. So other things is your credit score what's in the body of it may be good, but your credit score is not lendable because you might be have some small collection accounts, utilities, medical collection accounts, or you're just overextended on your debt. So I love to connect with you, talk to you about the bankruptcy. If you're in the middle of a 13 or you had a discharge and you want to purchase a home, don't discount yourself and don't say, I don't know, I can't purchase because I heard this from a friend who heard it from a relative who heard it from here. They're not in the business. Call a mortgage loan originator. Talk to them about, I'm looking to purchase or refinance a property, but I had a bankruptcy. You can meet those things with extenuating circumstances. So let's talk about that. If you're a willing and able buyer or homeowner looking to refinance, I'd love to connect with you because I want to get you in that position. If you're not there, at least let's get you a blueprint to get you there to be able to purchase or refinance a property. Thank you for taking the time out listening to me for almost 20 minutes about how long do I need to wait to buy a house after a bankruptcy 7 or a 13 here in the state of California. Have a great day. All my information is below. Check me out, Nathan Rufty. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this very informative podcast. Remember to subscribe, share, like, and comment. There is no better time than today to explore your options to purchase or refinance a home. Please call, text, or email me at the information below to get started right away, and I look forward in hearing from you.